Hi, we just recorded a wonderful episode talking about stress eating at midlife and all the ways to stop doing that. And it was a terrific conversation with Dr. Ellen and myself, and I can't wait for you to hear it.
Thanks for being on. It was fun, and you don't have to go it alone. So give it a listen.
Welcome to the Rock Your Midlife podcast, your transformative sanctuary designed to guide you through self-discovery and provide the tools you need to find your purpose and navigate life authentically. Whether you want to optimize your health, boost your happiness, or deepen your self-love, this podcast is your ultimate toolkit.
Welcome to Rock Your Midlife. I'm Dr. Ellen, the Midlife Whisperer, and I am so thrilled that you are here to join us today because we're talking about one of the struggles that most midlife women I know and work with struggle with, which is your weight. And I always like to say, focus on your lifestyle and the weight will get where it is. But, we're still really concerned about it. And my guest today is Dr. Heather Awad. She is a doctor, entrepreneur, mother, author, speaker, and expert in midlife weight loss. And she is going to be talking all about why this 50 plus area is so difficult for women. And also she's going to be talking about stress eating and how we can lose weight at midlife by following a healthy lifestyle. But before we kind of bring Dr. Heather on, I want to talk a little bit about why the heck we struggle so much with our weight. Once we hit midlife, when we go through menopause. And then one of the primary reasons is really hormone changes. So when estrogen goes down, we tend to gain weight, particularly around the midline. Estrogen receptors are everywhere in the body. And during perimenopause, leading up to menopause, those changes can really also impact our metabolism. So we're not burning as many calories as we once did. But I'm also here to say that don't blame everything on menopause. I hear that from so many women I know and work with who are like, well, I thought it was just menopause, so I decided I couldn't do anything about it. There's so much that you can do, which is what we're really going to talk about today. So metabolism does tend to slow down as we age in general, and there's that slowdown with the hormonal changes. There's also lifestyle changes. So, midlife brings significant lifestyle changes. So many of us are so busy. A lot of us have aging parents. We've got teens and tweens and kids and jobs and soccer practice and softball and proms and all of the things. We're really, really busy, and it's really hard to juggle all of it and find that time to take care of yourself, to get, 7-8 hours of sleep every night, to do your meal prep, to find time to work out, to go for a walk. So lifestyle change can really make it difficult, and that can bring the weight on. Another big factor is stress. And again, let's face it, we are stressed out at midlife because we've got a lot on our plates. If you are going through hormonal changes, that can be like throwing gasoline on the stress fire. If you're not eating right, taking care of yourself, it can make it even more difficult. I think a lot of us at midlife too are struggling with relationships, whether that's with aging parents, spouses, kids. So there is a lot of stress at work as well, of trying to keep up with all you have to do. Stress can really play a role. And, Dr. Heather's going to be talking about stress in eating and how we can manage that, because when we're stressed out, we often reach for food because appetite goes up when cortisol goes up, and it's not the best way to handle it. So the stress reduction is really important, but stress can cause you to gain weight. The other factor too is muscle loss. So as that estrogen declines, we can lose muscle, and muscle is more metabolically active. And it's also, we tend to get more sedentary. We're sitting a lot more. We are not, moving around as much. When you've got little kids, you're running after them, or maybe, before you had kids, you were going to the gym and really moving your body more. But I think at midlife, we also sit a lot more. And frankly, maybe eat a lot more, snack a lot more. So there's a lot of reasons why we're kind of set up for this perfect storm of weight loss. And now we're going to actually delve into some solutions to really help you to get to a weight that's right for you. And I think the more that I work with women at midlife, I'm so excited when people say, not only do I feel more confident in my body and I like the way my body looks, and I dropped a dress size or two, but they feel good. They go to the doctor and cholesterol is down and blood pressure is down and blood sugar is under control. They have more energy. They're sleeping better. They just feel so much better. So I think that's really the motivation to really change your lifestyle, and always doing it from this place of self-love, not because you hate your body and you're mad at yourself for how did I let myself go. Let's get that BS story off our plates and really do this because you love and care about yourself and you want to live a healthy life and you want to be there for the people that you love, including yourself. So let me formally introduce Dr. Heather. She is the founder and CEO of Vibrant Weight Loss Age 50 Plus, where she helps professional women over age 50 lose weight for the last time. I love that because it's like, let's face it, we do not want to go on those cockamamie crash diets where we're losing 10 and gaining 15 and driving ourselves crazy. Through a virtual platform, she offers a simple system that saves people time and helps them achieve their health and weight loss goals. Midlife women discover how to say no to foods they don't want without using willpower and create an eating protocol that they will enjoy going forward so that their weight loss is permanent. She's also the host of the VibrantMD podcast, where she talks about weight loss, women's health, and food. And I just had the pleasure of being on her podcast, which was super fun. Welcome to Rock Your Midlife, Dr. Heather.
Thank you so much for having me. I love your work. So we're both helping all the midlife women find all the ways forward to hit their goals.
Yeah, I'm glad we're talking about it too, because if you're listening, there's so many resources there for you. And what's so key is to find a medical team, whether you're finding coaches or MDs or, alternative medical practitioners, acupuncture, whatever it is. There's so much that you can do. And I'm really tired of the women who say to me, it's just menopause. And I'm just like, suck it up and just get through it. You don't have to do that. And today's show is going to give you a lot of strategies that you can use. So before we sort of dive into the strategies, Dr. Heather, tell us a little bit about how you got into this line of work. How did you become, weight loss coach?
Sure. Well, I'm a family doctor by training, and I was always a food as medicine doctor anyway. I actually, like you, had a mom that was into nutrition. So I was always interested in it. So if you were in my office and you had a high cholesterol level, I would say, well, let's talk about what you eat for lunch. And so that was always been my interest, to help people be healthier by eating healthier. And then somewhere in my mid to late 40s, I hadn't changed how I was eating really. And all of a sudden the number on the scale starts to go up and up. And so I tried the things that had worked for me before, and they didn't work at all. And it just kept going up. And I tried some awful diets, worked really hard, yo-yoed back even higher. And at 50, I would just notice I'm in an unhealthy range. Am I broken? Is something wrong? Am I stuck with this? Am I going to get diabetes? All those fears that you get at midlife when your weight has gone up. So I thought, there's got to be a solution here. So I did a lot of research and then started to find, when looking at when our estrogen drops at midlife and in the menopause transition, then we end up with this insulin resistance. And that ends up being the key to eating healthy and weight loss at midlife. Our insulin bumps up, and that also gives us, issues with the risk that we get for diabetes and heart disease at this age. And so I thought, this is it. So I started to work on changing how I was eating. And it turned out, though, that I was also doing a lot of emotional eating and stress eating. So I got a coach for that. And then with both of those things together, I was able to lose 27 pounds and keep it off and really not worry about it coming back on again. Understanding how my body worked a little differently at this point in time, and also not eating my feelings. And so I thought, this would be a wonderful thing to bring to other midlife women, because it's a common complaint. We don't like it when we start to get bigger around the middle. And we've got evidence now that for sure that it hurts our health at that age as well.
And I love that you're bringing insulin into the conversation, because, when we're talking about menopause and midlife, we're always talking about estrogen, maybe we're talking about progesterone a little bit as well, but insulin is a really important hormone. It's the hormone that lets sugar, glucose into your cells. So what is the connection with insulin and midlife and weight gain?
So when we have high insulin, sorry, I'll back up a little bit. So as our estrogen drops, we have a natural bump in insulin resistance. And that means that insulin, which normally comes in and helps us process the food that we eat, the glucose that's in our bloodstream, it doesn't fit as well. The key and the lock does not fit as well. And so we need more insulin to process that glucose in our bloodstream. But the problem is that insulin also tells our bodies it's time to store fat. Here comes the glucose. Let's store a little bit of energy as glycogen in the liver, and then everything else will go as fat. And so if we have high insulin all the time, which a lot of women at midlife end up in that situation, then they are in a fat storage mode all the time. So they can cut calories or whatever, but they will continue to store. And it tends to be that middle weight gain, or what people complain about, belly fat. But also we get people are starting to hear more about visceral fat, where it's actually fat inside behind the belly button, around the organs, which can cause fatty liver disease and increase our risk of other diseases. So, this hormone change actually has a lot going on at that time.
Yeah, it's really a domino effect. And then you bring the stress in, which makes our cortisol levels go up. And that is even more like appetite goes up, more fat deposition. The body really wants to mobilize and have fuel there for the emergencies, but it becomes chronic instead of just like, okay, the saber-toothed tiger has like chased me up the tree and now I need to come down and get back to normal. We're in this constant state of fight, flight. And then on top of it, we're not sleeping well, which is adding to the stress, which is really, then you've got all these appetite hormones that are not regulating. So it really is a crazy time. So I love that you have formulated, a system for specifically women who are going through these things. Tell us a little bit about what your protocol is to help women 50 plus lose weight.
Sure. One of the things that we look at when we want our insulin in a normal, healthy body. Our insulin, we'll eat, our body turns it into glucose, and the insulin will clear it out. And then we don't eat for a while. We have meals. But we live in a society where we eat all day long, and we eat when we're stressed, and we eat because we deserve it, and we eat because we're emotionally feeling empty at the end of a hard work day, or after, wrestling with our teenagers in the evening. And so I really talk about the simple act of eating meals and moving away from eating in between meals. And part of that is really looking at what those emotions are and what the stressors are. But having time where nothing is going on in your digestive system so that insulin can drop, and you have that nice drop overnight because you ate dinner, and then if you fed yourself enough, then you didn't need to eat later, and you have a nice time where that insulin goes low. And then your body will naturally, to have energy, will pull that little bit that you've stored in your liver, and then will pull fat stores for energy. And it seems very simple. I honestly every day get people who say it can't be that. And oftentimes it's just that.
Yeah, it's hard too because food is everywhere. I mean, particularly if you,
Yes.
are working in an office and you go by the break room, and we do have this sense that it's supposed to be available 24/7. And I've gotten away from snacking, and I became a dietitian. It was like, oh yeah, snacks are good. But now I try to eat probably maybe 2, maybe 3 meals a day. But I think I love that idea of stop eating all the time. I think too, when you're eating all the time, you totally lose track of your satiety and hunger signals.
Yes.
And your body will regulate and get you to a healthy place if you listen to it. But if you're always eating, you never get to that place. And I'm amazed at how many of my clients don't know what hunger feels like.
Right. Because we do. And I used to do that as well, graze, because things are around all the time. And some of the cultural stuff too, you need to look at your life, the culture of your own life. I had a pediatrician that I worked with who wanted to lose weight. And she said, I'm mad because if I do this, if I try to eat healthier, then there's cake in the break room every day, and then I can't have the cake every day. And I'm mad because other people are doing that. And I asked her, I said, do you think it's a good idea for you to eat cake every day? Do you want to eat cake every day at work? And then she looked at me and said, oh, no, that's not healthy. So we have to just look at what's there. I had another woman who had, they had donuts always in the break room, or even there's, other people who say we have energy bars or things, but there's stuff there as if we're going to starve in between meals, or as if we have to have a treat in between meals every day. So take a look at kind of what's in your environment and what you could pivot on and look at what's not serving you anymore.
Yeah, and I think when you think about this sort of deprivation, thinking about, we always think about food as the first thing that we want to give ourselves. But what else could I give myself? Like instead of going to the break room and having the cake, maybe I could just go outside and take a little walk or read a book or listen to some music or take, like a 10, 15-minute break to do something for me, to make a list of other things other than food that really serve you. So I love that idea. So the number one thing is stop eating around the clock other than maybe when you're sleeping. But it is a big issue that I see with a lot of people who aren't even aware of just how much they're eating throughout the day. And then we eat in the evening as we're watching TV, and it's a habit that we really need to break. So that's number one. And now let's talk a little bit about the stress eating, because you mentioned that yourself.
Sure.
I'm sure I know we had talked off the air that you've got 4 kids. So I can imagine 4 kids and a marriage and being a physician and feeling stressed. So you experienced that yourself. What exactly is stress eating?
So stress eating is emotional eating. And sometimes we aren't even sure kind of where it's coming from, but we just feel it, right? You feel wound up, and you get a craving to go fix it with some sort of food that's in your break room or in your pantry, or you brought it in your bag. And I think the one of the great ways to look at this is to stop, because we all know that we feel it, and stop and tell yourself that there's probably a real emotion underneath that feeling, and find it and name it. And sometimes it's something really simple: sad, mad, glad, angry, whatever. And just, tell yourself what it is, and then notice where you feel it in your body. Like really drop in, because we all have difference. I meet people who they get that tightening across their shoulders every time they have it. And some people actually feel like someone's kind of squeezing their neck. Some people it's in their belly. There's like a pain or a cramp there. Stop and just notice what that is. And when you can name that emotion, you'll notice that something is actually going on. Are you feeling overworked today at work? I remember going into my pantry and reaching for the crackers and stopping and saying, I'm angry with my teenager. And noticing that actually I had been buffering away that stress about what was going on with my teenager and myself with crackers. And when I stopped, I thought, oh my goodness, number one, my teenager's kind of being a jerk this week. And number two, I'm kind of being a jerk also. And it made, gave me the opportunity to think about what we really needed in our relationship. And, was there something we could talk about? Could I show up a little differently when my teenager was being a jerk? Or whatever, so that there are things that we ignore, real issues that we ignore when we just, eat away with, eat crackers to make that go away.
Yeah, I love that. And I say, name it, you tame it, feel it, you heal it. And that's exactly what you said. Name the emotion that you are feeling, recognize it. And I think that we're taught that it's okay to feel like joy and gratitude and happiness, but God forbid we're like sad, grieving, angry. But those are all emotions are useful. And those emotions can really give you a friend. Like you were like, oh, I'm being kind of a jerk. He's kind of, or she's being kind of a jerk, and maybe we can resolve it. And that's the other beautiful thing that happens is when you stop the emotional eating, you take care of the issue in the root, right?
Yeah.
So it's like, let's be like burn down the forest by eating, I don't know, eating these crackers instead of like clearing up the infected tree. So it's like, because what happens is when we eat emotionally, we're distracted, like you're crunching and and you're kind of distracted. It kind of feels good. Your dopamine levels might be going up. But then after you've had the crackers, not only have you not resolved the issue with your kid, but on top of it, you're like, oh, I just ate 500 calories of crackers that I didn't need. And you feel kind of guilty and bad about your behavior. So beautiful
Yeah.
example, and something that we all can do of just just acknowledging the emotion, feeling it in your body. And I think just doing that alone really helps to air it out so that you don't want to do the emotional eating.
Yeah, it kind of takes the urgency out of that craving, that you're having. And this is super normal in our society. I like the comedian Jim Gaffigan, and one of the only reasons I like him is that he always does an emotional eating joke in his routine, and at least one, and he'll say, this terrible thing happened, and then I just went and ate pizza till I didn't feel that anymore. And everyone laughs, and I just love observing that, because that is we have normalized that, but it doesn't mean that us each as individuals need to have, respond that way to our bad feelings.
Yeah, and it is a culture thing. I mean, I think when we're little, so often, parents give their kids a cookie. It's like the kid's crying and like, here's a cookie. And like, oh, okay. I associate eating sweets with feeling better, or my mother's love. And it makes sense. I mean, when we're born, we get milk, and that, if we're crying and we're upset. And so that's a natural thing to like reach for food when something is not comfortable. But then I think later on in life, as you're saying, it can become very, very dysfunctional. So let's talk a little bit about why do we gain weight with stress eating, and what does stress eating do to our hormones? Coming back to that, conversation we were having earlier about the insulin and the estrogen.
Yeah, so when we stress eat, we basically put ourselves in a high insulin level all day long. And so even, we have I don't count calories or macros or anything, because I just don't think we need that in our lives. But I'll have people who are stress eating all day and say, but I didn't eat that many calories. But what they've done is put themselves into a high insulin level all day long. So their body is literally, this insulin is telling your body to store, 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 store. And you can't really fight that by eating less calories over the whole day. And so that's, stress eating, is emotional eating, not at it, and not eating our meals, and nourishing ourselves at our meals. It's eating in between meals, always eating after the meeting with that one person, always eating at night after a hard day. And those things just keep our insulin cycle, and our digestive system revved up when it needs to have some quiet time.
Yeah, and as well as getting throwing that cortisol in there because you're stressed. And so you've got the
Right,
insulin and you've got the cortisol, and it's kind of like the perfect storm for gaining weight and not feeling good and your health kind of going south. So, do you have any techniques to help people who, it's habitual? So, you're used to, I turn on the TV and I pour the potato chips, I go to the break room and I have a piece of cake. The people who,
Yeah.
I'm driving to work and I stop at Dunkin' Donuts and I get myself, a donut and a cup of coffee, and where
Right.
people have these habits of how, because eating is, it's a habitual thing. What do you recommend people in terms of helping people break habits? 'Cause certainly breaking habits is often harder than making new healthy habits. Any
Right.
suggestions?
Right. Especially when you don't have something to replace it with, like eating at night and you're like, oh, well, what should I do now? So, it depends on what's going on, but sometimes, for a lot of people, if you have food that you don't want to eat that's in the break room at work, I think that mantras are really helpful. Um, and mantras are thinking of some things ahead of time that are very self-compassionate, but also thoughts that you think on purpose. And maybe you might be able to not go in the break room and go talk to a friend, or like you said, to go outside. But if you need to go in there and you're always going to see the box of donuts, then finding a thought that serves you, like, I don't actually feel that good when I eat donuts, or I'm going to get a headache if I eat a donut. I get stomach aches when I eat donuts, or sometimes something really simple like, that's not for me. And just saying and practicing that thought, because our brains do really love repetition and are very into habits. So before, you were probably walking in and thinking, I want that. But if you go in and say, that's not for me, and if you practice it, then after a while, you actually don't get the craving, um, because your brain has convinced itself that you don't want that. Other times, nighttime eating is a real tough one. And like you said, it is a habit. And there are a lot of ways to kind of break that one, because it's not an easy one. Sometimes it is switching to something instead of a snack. If you're like, my brain just really needs to eat something, have chosen something ahead of time that you can eat that is healthy and not exciting, like a baby carrot. If that's not something that normally you're super excited about, then you just eat it and it's boring. And so it helps you kind of bridge your way into not eating. Sometimes it's simpler things like sitting in a different spot while you watch TV with your spouse, or by yourself. I even have clients who will have moved the furniture around a little bit, because then the brain walks in and says, I'm sitting in a different chair now. And so it doesn't automatically say, also, I need Doritos, because you've changed things around. There's a lot of tricks we can play with our brain. And then some people just also do other swaps, like they have a cup of herbal tea. So they're holding something, that gives them that kind of safe feeling of not changing too much. So
Yeah,
those
those
are,
are good suggestions. I always say this, like you have a behavior chain and you can decide where to break it. And you can also just not bring those things into the house. Like I'm a big fan of
yes.
having my clients. I love frozen berries. So I'll have, some frozen berries is kind of my last thing. And I think the teeth brushing thing is good. I don't know about you, but my teeth
Yes.
brushing between,
Yeah.
flossing and water pick and, electric toothbrush, it's like a 5-minute thing. And so like once I've
Yeah.
done all that, my teeth feel good. It's kind of like you're breaking that habit loop. So you've got like, okay, I took care of my teeth feel good. The reward is like I'm done, I'm done. I mean, I think we can go to bed earlier. I think a lot of people are
Yes.
struggling with sleep issues. I mean, going to another room, like as you said, is really good. And doing a different activity. Like I've really started one of my midlife projects is learning to play the ukulele and learning Spanish.
Oh,
So when
fun.
I'm playing the ukulele, I use apps for both of them. And it's like really fun. And my brain is really occupied.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to eat while I'm speaking Spanish or playing the ukulele, but just like
Yeah.
maybe think about something new that you wanted to do, something from your youth, or maybe, you want to like do a adult coloring book or draw or play an instrument or going to another room, as you said, having a cup of tea, taking a hot bath. And I think rewarding yourself too. If you're like, oh, if I go for like, how do we reward ourselves for going a week without, having those snacks at night? And eventually you get used to it, but it is hard to extinguish old habits.
Yeah. And I love what you said too about coming up with something else to do, because I get this a lot with my clients. People will literally say, now that I'm not going and snacking all afternoon, I don't know what to do with my time. And so there's probably a list of things that you think, if only I had time, I'd learn to play the ukulele, or, whatever it is. Or, you probably have a few things that maybe you wanted to do over the years that you didn't have time for. And literally that snacking is taking up that time. You've chosen to do that instead. And so it's really an opportunity to try something new or pick up something old. And, and I think that's a really cool thing about not snacking.
Yeah, it's so weird that we got into this whole snacking thing. And I remember again when I was in dietetic school, like snacking was a good thing to keep you from getting hungry later. And I'm all for having an apple if you're having a late dinner so you don't overdo it because you don't want your hunger to be too high. But I think we've really taken it overboard. We're actually, and people have your clients are actually a little scared of hunger, like the sense of like,
Yes.
I might be too hungry and then what might happen?
Yes. And we talk about that a lot. That's real. A lot of people say that. And then, I'll recommend that people kind of listen to that voice, and and just notice it, because sometimes we don't even notice it. We just feel like, oh my goodness, am I going to have food? And then and I say, okay, you describe this, kind of reflect back what they described, that feeling. And I'll say, is it possible that you would not get food then at dinner time? And they'll say, oh, actually, oh, I know I'm going to have dinner. And it's, well, let that voice talk, but then reassure it. I know we're having dinner. And I'm not hungry, and I know that there's food coming, and all will be well, because most of us, live in a world where food is available. So
Yeah. Too available. So tell me a little bit more. I know you've got a program. So tell us a little bit about your program. Are there any like specific kind of foods that you suggest or an exercise protocol? How do you help people deal with stress so they're not stress eating? Tell us a little bit more about how you work with your clients. And I know you also have a program that you're going to be offering the end of May.
Yeah. So we dial in a lot on food, stress, sleep, relationships, and all those things that cause difficulty with food. We have pretty good evidence that exercise does not help us lose weight. So the program that I have is not an exercise program. That being said, we know that for our menopause bodies, we need to do some strength training. Because that actually is what keeps our metabolism up and also keeps us from getting frail as we get older, because we are in a state where we're losing muscle mass if we're not building muscle mass. People will ask me about cardio, and what I do recommend is stress reducing cardio. So anything that sounds fun to you is going to be stress reduction. Maybe walking trails by your house, maybe a dance class, maybe playing a sport. It's going to be different for different people, but something that's fun. If it seems like a chore, then it will be a chore and it will not help you reduce your stress. So finding something that seems fun is my recommendation. Yeah, but
Dancing is the best. I'm always dancing on Instagram. It always is a, good way to get that heart up a little bit. And I love dancing with my man and dancing on the beach. And I love that you say fun. And let's repeat this again. Exercise is not a weight loss method. For the longest time, people have said exercise, it'll help you lose weight. Exercise is so important for your health, mental health, physical health, raising your metabolism, feeling good, not being the frail little old lady, but being like strong. Like, I want to be able to pick up my bags and put them up on the rack in the airplane, right? We want to be strong. It's so important for, daily activity. We want to be that person that I can't lift the pan anymore, so I'm going to get a lighter pan. I can't lift my groceries. So important. But the research really, exercise is not the magic bullet that a lot of people say that it is in terms of weight loss. And I think that when we overdo it, we raise our stress, and it actually can make things worse. And I think we get guilt trip ourselves if we don't do the gym, if we don't do it perfectly. So I love that you said that, and making it fun is really important. Any specific eating protocols, any kind of, and you said you don't count macros or calories, which I love, because that's just like, who does that?
Yeah. Yeah. And I have clients who know the calorie of every food, and I can tell that they're stressed out by eating. So what I like to say is to eat 2 or 3 meals. And I work with people on what that looks like with their day. Because, maybe Thursday is different than Monday, which is different than Saturday. And we kind of look at how you can, in a stress-free way, choose how you're going to do your meals. And at those meals, you want protein, and you want, whether that's vegetable protein, or I do work with people that eat meat as well. And then you also want fiber at that meal, which is going to be vegetables or berries, and sometimes fruit, sometimes whole grains, but just the fiber in your meal, and to have some healthy fats. All the women at midlife went through the 80s, and even in where everything was, don't eat fat. And even though we got through the research that says that, that these healthy fats in vegetables and in olive oil are just fine for us, it's hard to break that programming, but it does help us feel nourished. It does, along with the protein, helps us feel full longer. So every meal, protein, fiber, and healthy fats.
Yeah. And protein, fiber, and I was at produce. I always tell people, if you think about your plate, fill the top half with produce. Your carbohydrate is like the size of your fist. Your protein is about the size of your palm, 4 ounces of lean protein, or, vegetarian source. But it doesn't have to be crazy. And as you sort of get away from the stress eating, you find people are able to listen to their appetite, eat when they're hungry, slow it down, use some mindful eating or some intuitive eating, so that you start to really tap into those signals of hunger and satiety.
Yeah, we really work on that as well, because like you said, people, when we eat all day long, we don't know what it feels like. We literally will talk about what does it feel like in my body to feel hungry? What does it feel like to feel satisfied? What does it feel like to feel overfull, to kind of learn those things? And the other real bonus of quitting stress eating and eating more meals than snacks is that when you show up to a meal, it tastes better. So, we actually downregulate our taste buds when we eat constantly all day long as well. And so when you show up not hungry and your taste buds are downregulated, the meal is not that awesome. But when you've eaten lunch and fed yourself enough so that you didn't need to, you could go and then dinner time you ate again, then you show up and it smells good. It tastes delicious. It's just such a better experience. And all my clients say this as well. And so I've really enjoyed that as well. And I do want to just say one thing too. I'm not telling you never eat in between meals, because sometimes we underfeed ourselves a little at lunch. And if you're hungry, you should eat something nourishing. So I'm not telling people like only eat meals and, no matter what, but work toward experimenting that you get enough at lunch, that you go longer.
Yeah, I love that. I don't leave the house without without my little bag of almonds, because I never know, or a piece of fruit, because I never know when, I
Yeah,
might be hungry, because I'm pretty active. So I love that. And I love that you mentioned too that food does taste better. The interesting thing is when we eat whole foods, the first bites are great, and then we slowly, as we go through the meal, have less and less desire for it. When we eat the highly processed foods, we just want more and more and more and more. So that's
right.
usually what we think about with snacking. So fantastic information. I think my big takeaway is something I teach all the time about: feel your emotions. Yeah. Name it,
Yeah,
you tame it, feel it, you heal it, deal with what is causing your stress instead of stressful eating. It's going to take a while to notice that. Be easy with yourself. I know you practice, self-compassion and teach that as well, of telling people that it's a process and it's going to take time, but you can get there. And so people want to work with you. Dr. Heather, where is the best way they can find you?
sure. Probably the easiest way is to go to my website, heatherawadmd.com. And I do also have a podcast, as you mentioned, and we just changed the name from VibrantMD podcast to Vibrant Menopause podcast. So that's where you'll find it on all the platforms.
All right. So
And I'm also pretty active on LinkedIn if people want to find me there.
oh, cool. All right. Well, that's Dr. Heather Awad. Did I pronounce it right? I'm sorry. I know I'm always butchering.
Okay, it's Awad, but
Awad. Dr.
yeah,
Heather Awad. It's AWAD. It's the Vibrant Menopause podcast, which I just had the pleasure of being on. And so if you are struggling with your weight, no shame there either. We didn't talk about that. I think that's a big issue too. A lot of women at midlife feel there's a lot of shame. I know a lot of the people that I work with are so successful and such high achievers, and they failed a lot in this area. And you haven't failed. The diet has failed you. And
yeah.
the thing to do is to learn to work with your emotions and work with your body and get the support that you need. So Dr. Heather, thank you so much for being here. And thank you all for listening. This has been Rock Your Midlife. I'm Dr. Ellen, the Midlife Whisperer. We'll catch you soon.
Welcome to the Rock Your Midlife podcast, your transformative sanctuary designed to guide you through self-discovery and provide the tools you need to find your purpose and navigate life authentically. Whether you want to optimize your health, boost your happiness, or deepen your self-love, this podcast is your ultimate toolkit.